Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to dive deep, and I mean really deep, into mastering the math of wealth. Today we're talking about the engine and the turbocharger. We're going on a chronological journey to decode the invisible, mathematical, and honestly psychological shifts of building real wealth. Look, if you've ever felt like you're doing absolutely all the right things with your money, you're saving, you're investing, but you're just barely inching forward, well, you're definitely not alone. It's incredibly common. See, wealth doesn't build in a straight line. It's not linear. It builds in distinct phases, and the rules of the entire game change depending on exactly what phase you're in. Today, we're going to break down every single major threshold, from zero all the way to over $1 million, with practical, real-world math. Get ready, because the concepts we're about to cover, they are going to completely change how you view your very next paycheck.
So to really understand why building wealth feels so utterly frustrating at the start, let's look at a specific, highly relatable example. Let's talk about Marcus. Marcus is a 38-year-old logistics manager. He makes a solid income, right? Now, 8 years ago, Marcus did exactly what all the conventional wisdom tells you to do. He set up an automatic investment of $150 a month straight into an index fund. And he's been incredibly disciplined about it. He hasn't panic sold during market dips. He hasn't skipped a single month to buy something frivolous. But after 8 solid years of grinding it out, he logs into his brokerage account, checks his balance, and it's sitting at just $16,500. Think about that for a second. He personally contributed $14,400 of that out of his own pocket. The market? The market only gave him a mere $2,100 over nearly a decade. When you see that, it naturally begs the incredibly frustrating question, is this it? Is this the magic of investing everyone talks about? Marcus is experiencing what behavioral economists actually call the feedback gap. It's when you're doing the exact right behavior, day in and day out, but you're seeing results that are so agonizingly small that your brain literally registers the whole process as a failure.
And honestly, here is the brutal reality of that feedback gap. Let's say you were to invest a meager $50 a month for 30 straight years. Let's assume a solid, reliable 8% return. After all that time, you would end up with exactly $74,500. 30 years of unbroken militant discipline, and the end result wouldn't even cover 2 years of average living expenses today. When people see painfully slow growth like this, they almost always misdiagnose the root problem. They look at their account and think, man, my return rate is terrible. I need to find a better stock, or maybe a riskier mutual fund, or hey, maybe I should just dump it all into a crypto meme coin to catch up. But actually, the problem isn't your return rate at all. The problem is simply the low contribution. Chasing a 16% return instead of an 8% return when you're only making tiny deposits, that just adds massive, completely unnecessary risk to your life, and frankly, it usually ends in total disaster.
To truly understand why early wealth building works this way, we need to completely shift our mindset. We need to think about it the exact same way a mechanic thinks about a turbocharger. Now, if you know cars, you know that a turbocharger uses the engine's exhaust, basically waste energy, to spin a turbine. That turbine then forces more air back into the engine, creating this massive, powerful feedback loop. But here is the absolute secret to turbos. They do not work at low RPMs. Below a certain threshold, that turbo is bolted to the engine, sure, but it is doing absolutely nothing. The engine is running 100% on the fuel you are manually injecting. That right there, that is phase 1 of investing, the engine. Your manual monthly contributions are the fuel. Before your account balance reaches a specific, critical size, compounding returns are technically happening in the background, but they lack the pressure to actually spin the turbo and give you any real boost. So your goal in phase 1 is not to obsess over chasing high returns. Your goal is to manually pump as much fuel into that engine as humanly possible, just to get the RPMs high enough for the turbocharger to finally engage.
Let's look at how this math actually plays out for our guy Marcus over time, and I want you to pay close attention to how dramatically his future changes simply by getting his financial engine into boost mode just a little bit faster. If he just sticks to the status quo, keeping that $150 a month going, he hits age 65 with just $121,000. Realistically, he'll be working part-time well into his 70s with that number, but consider what we call the slight bump. By increasing his contribution to $400, meaning an extra $250 a month, which is literally less than half of an average car payment, his balance balloons to $337,000. Why is the jump so huge? Because that extra fuel gets his engine into phase 2 compounding 3 full years earlier. Those extra 3 years of the turbo spinning at full absolute power generate hundreds of thousands of dollars essentially out of thin air. And if he can manage to hit $600 a month, maybe by picking up a side hustle or driving rideshare just one single night a week, he crosses $500,000, $537,000 to be exact. The math here is undeniable. Early dollars are worth drastically, fundamentally more than late dollars.
Okay, so practically speaking, how do we systematically force our portfolios across that threshold? And how do we do it without living miserably on just rice and beans? Well, here is a no-nonsense, three-step approach. Step 1. Contribution right-sizing. Look, most people set an auto deposit years ago and literally never updated it. Go log in right now and bump it by just $50. Over 20 years, that single 15-minute decision alone is worth nearly $30,000. Step 2. Income redirection. Whenever you get a raise or a nice end-of-year bonus, your lifestyle will naturally absorb it within about 90 days. We all do it. The trick is to automate 50% of that new net income straight into your investments the very day you get it. If your lifestyle still gets to improve, but your wealth accelerates simultaneously. And step 3, life event resets. This is huge. When that $700 monthly car loan is finally paid off, take $400 of it and redirect it immediately into your investments before your consumer brain kicks in and finds a shiny new place to spend it. As you apply those 3 steps and start manually forcing those RPMs higher, you are going to hit your very first invisible wealth threshold, $20,000 in liquid savings. Now, to the broader financial system, this specific number is a massive threat. Economists literally classify households as financially fragile below this line and financially resilient above it. Think about your retail bank. Their internal profitability model is entirely built around what they call high engagement accounts. Basically, they want you earning $60,000 a year, but stretched just thin enough that you occasionally overdraft, maybe carry a small balance, and constantly need to use their high-fee financial products. But when you cross that $20,000 mark, you break their algorithm. You stop paying the toll. Suddenly, a $1,200 emergency car repair is no longer a massive life crisis that requires you to take on high-interest debt. It's just a minor, annoying Tuesday. At $20,000, you have fundamentally bought your own financial breathing room.
And then, through relentless, boring consistency, you eventually arrive at $100,000. Welcome to the ultimate phase transition. Remember our turbocharger analogy? This is the exact RPM where the boost finally noticeably kicks in. At $100K, compounding stops being this abstract theoretical concept on a fancy spreadsheet, and it becomes a highly visible reality in your day-to-day life. Why? Because at $100,000, a mere 1% market move generates a full $1,000. A strong market year can easily add $8,000 to $12,000 to your net worth without you depositing a single, solitary extra dollar yourself. It's an incredible feeling. Your money has officially hired its own workers. And for the very first time in your life, you don't have to carry the whole financial load on your own back.
By the way, if you're having a bit of an aha moment right now as we go through this, and you want to truly master the math behind this Phase 2 momentum, you need to hit subscribe to Langford Invests right now. In this explainer and everything we do, we break down the exact mechanics, the psychology, and the structures of building wealth so that you can navigate all these phase transitions with absolute, unshakable confidence. So hit subscribe, and let's keep building this machine.
Okay, let's keep going and look at what happens when that turbocharger is running at full screaming capacity. At $300,000, the math gets virtually unstoppable. Seriously, the years immediately following this specific threshold are some of the most incredibly powerful compounding years you will ever experience in your lifetime, because now your portfolio is physically outworking your human effort. The absolute worst thing you can do at this stage is break the chain. The investors who successfully build multi-million-dollar portfolios rarely make dramatic, exciting moves here. They don't interrupt the compounding engine. They know that momentum is literally everything. And yet, this is exactly the stage where most people get bored. They start feeling a little rich way too early, and they make absolute critical mistakes.
Right as that engine gets totally unstoppable, people fall into the single most dangerous behavioral trap of all. You've worked so hard, you've hit $300,000, and your consumer brain starts whispering to you. It says, you know what? I deserve a reward. I'm doing great. I'm going to upgrade my lifestyle and buy a nice brand new truck. Listen to this math. The average person spends an absolute fortune on vehicles. Between an $800 monthly payment, premium insurance, gas, and maintenance, that shiny new truck will cost roughly $130,000 over 7 years. And at the end of that 7-year period, you own a depreciating piece of metal worth maybe $15,000. Guys, that is not transportation financing, that is literal wealth destruction with heated seats. And the invisible cost of that lifestyle upgrade is honestly devastating. When you pull money out of your compounding engine to buy, say, a $40,000 car, you aren't just spending $40,000. You are permanently sacrificing what those exact dollars would have multiplied into. At an 8% return over 20 years, pulling that $40,000 out quietly and completely erases $185,000 in future wealth. Let that sink in. That is the second hidden price tag attached to every single major purchase you make during this phase. The people who actually retire wealthy, they simply recognize this math. They fiercely protect their system, and they outright refuse to sabotage their turbocharger just for a temporary depreciating status symbol. If you can protect the system from your own consumer brain, you'll cross into straight-up, life-changing territory, $500,000. At this threshold, things get wild. A boring, sensible mix of index funds returning an average of 8.5% creates over $42,500 a year, entirely passively. That is over $3,500 hitting your account every single month, completely hands-free. No boss, no alarm clock, no commute required for those dollars. This right here is the literal definition of escaping the rat race. You aren't slowly draining a bathtub of savings until you die. Instead, you are living off the interest waves that your giant pile of capital is naturally generating. You effectively become financially immortal because your money is mathematically designed to outlast you.
The crucial reality of this phase really boils down to one simple idea. Real wealth is piles of options, not piles of stuff. When your basic living expenses are suddenly covered by the $42,000 your investments spit out annually, you can stop renting out your hours. You can finally leave that toxic job. You can take a risk and start a business. You can take a month off without a hint of panic. You wake up when your body says so, not when an alarm demands it. You stop evaluating decisions based strictly on cost, and you start evaluating them based on time and personal fulfillment. True freedom isn't about buying private jets or flashy watches. It's about having the ultimate absolute power to say no to what drains you and yes to what fills you.
Eventually, if you let it run, that massive momentum carries you into the ultimate financial milestone, $1 million. When you cross the seven-figure mark, something fascinating happens. The entire financial system suddenly notices you. Doors that you didn't even know existed suddenly swing wide open. You get access to private banking, private equity, and exclusive venture capital deals. You unlock things like margin lending, which allows you to borrow against your own portfolio at incredibly low rates to buy, say, real estate without ever selling a single stock and triggering a massive tax event. Complex strategies like tax loss harvesting suddenly become highly lucrative. The rules of the game fundamentally shift to favor you in ways that are honestly almost unfair to the average everyday person.
At this $1 million level, you undergo a profound psychological shift. You completely transform your financial identity. You are no longer the saver. A saver is playing pure offense, right? They're grinding away, stacking pennies, feeling the heavy weight of every single dollar as they climb up the mountain. But at $1 million, you officially graduate into being a capital owner. You shift from offense to playing defense. Your primary goal is no longer just blind accumulation, it's protection, it's optimization, and it's deploying literal armies of dollars to go out and work for you. You start thinking beyond yourself. You start thinking about legacy and how your wealth will impact your family for generations after you're gone.
Which brings us to our final thought for today. The math is sitting right in front of you. The compounding engine is real and it is available to anyone who is willing to fuel it. You don't need millions to start. You just need to start making your dollars work rather than constantly spending them on depreciating metal and temporary dopamine hits. So, when you look at your very next paycheck, I really want you to ask yourself, are you feeding the consumer machine to build a pile of stuff? Or are you fueling your own compounding engine to build a pile of options, to buy back your time and to secure your absolute freedom? The choice is entirely yours. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. If this gave you a new way to think about your wealth, subscribe to Langford Invests. Leave a comment below with the one savings move you're making this year, and I'll see you in the next one.